today Ron Garan. Don't think that it's Yuri Gagarin. No, it's different name. It's Ron Garan from USA. This is a very strong and powerful man who is an astronaut. And you know that I think that astronauts are one of the bravest men in the world, how men should be, not man who looks like a woman, but this is a real man who can show the power. He's the astronaut, he's entrepreneur, he's collecting a lot of money to help charity organizations. He was 71 million mile journey. He was 178 days in the space and 18 days at the ocean, on the bottom of the ocean. I'm very impressed, Ron. Hello.
Привет, Olga. It's nice
Привет, Ron. Happy to see you. Dear Ron, my first question to you. You were raised that Russians are the biggest enemies because somehow our politicians are doing that, and you were raised to fight the Russians, which goes without saying because it was Cold War time. And then on the spaceship, you were working closely with Russian cosmonauts, and it was a completely different story where 178 days in space, you depend on each other. How did you find out when you have to be with your enemy 178 days in the place where you cannot run away? How was that?
Well, when I found that out, didn't consider them the enemy at the time. Although, I have to say for the first 15 years of my adult life, I trained to fight the Russians. I was a Cold War fighter pilot stationed in West Germany before the fall of the Berlin Wall. And a decade or two later, I found myself in a previously top secret Soviet military installation at the foot of a rocket that was going to take me and my two Russian military crewmates to space for 6 months. And I looked up at the rocket, and there was an American flag and a Russian flag side by side on the rocket. And that was an image that was burned into me because all of the stereotypes that I had been conditioned to believe, one by one fell to the wayside as I started to train with my Russian crewmates for our mission. And you're right. The politicians are in power to create fear-based policies, and that's how they get elected. And so I thought it was wonderful. And when we're on the International Space Station, there's not the American crew and Russian crew and Japanese crew or European crew. There's just the crew. There's just one single unified international crew that works together to protect, maintain the life support systems of the space station and further the mission of the space station, of the International Space Station. And it's not just the crew on board. It's not just the crew in space. It's the crews throughout the world in the various mission control rooms around the world, all working together as a single unit. And that is a perfect example for the rest of the world to follow. If we could have that same level of cooperation, that same level of collaboration, and bring it down to the surface of the Earth, we'd have a lot less problems facing us as a species. And so I think it's a really shining example of international cooperation.
It goes without saying, if you can stay in one rocket together and you're not fighting and you help each other, that means we can do it on Earth. Why not? We are traveling up to be together and to work together, and we cannot do it on Earth. That is ridiculous. My question to you, Ron, what was the most challenging? 178 days in space, it's a lot. It's half a year. It's a lot. I think I heard that it's difficult to wash there, that you become a little bit stinky, and it's different. And when people enter the rocket, sometimes they told me that it's a strong smell of people who were there. But it's not that thing. What was the most challenging for you personally?
Well, first of all, I don't think that it does smell because we're living in basically a clean room. So there's nothing to get dirty. There's no dirt there. So it's a very sterile environment. And we don't have a shower, but we are able to wash and keep clean, just with sponge bath type of thing. But I think the most challenging part is being separated from your loved ones, your friends, your family. And so I think that, for 6 months, that's a long time to be separated. But what also is challenging sometimes is working with folks who have a completely different perspective than you do. And I'm not talking about, on board the space station where the Russians and the Americans have a different perspective. No, not at all. I'm talking about being in space and working with people on the ground, regardless of where they are, whether they're in Moscow or Japan or the US, they, because they're on the ground and they're not in space, have a completely different perspective of even just the day-to-day operations on board the space station. And
you mean that they don't understand that it's dangerous? They don't understand that you are tired? Or what is that different perspective?
The different perspective is that they're not there and they don't see with their own eyes what we see. And they a lot of times don't understand the situation on board. They make an assumption of what the situation is on board, and a lot of times that's not correct. And so the lesson learned there, and how we learn to work together through that, is by appreciating the other perspective. If there's two different perspectives, it doesn't mean that one is right and one is wrong. It means that they're just two different views of the same thing. And so, when we see things from two different views, we see them in stereoscopic vision, right? So the more perspectives we can apply to a situation, to a problem, to a challenge, the deeper our understanding of that challenge and situation will be, and the better our solutions. And that applies on Earth as well, because right now we live in a very polarized, very divisive world, and people treat other perspectives as wrong, when what we should be doing is incorporating those perspectives into this problem-solving process, which is a source of strength. Our diversity of perspective is a source of strength.
Ron, how was the Earth from the space? You were in space, and you were saying that when you finished your job on space mission and spaceship, you had a lot of free time, and you were always looking at Earth through the illuminator. How is the Earth from the space, and why you spend so much time looking out?
Well, I didn't have a lot of free time, but whatever free time I had, that was my favorite pastime, to just simply float over to a window and look at the Earth. And I, most astronauts and cosmonauts I know feel the same exact way, that's what they want to do. They want to spend every moment they possibly can looking out the window, because it's absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. And it's changing all the time. It's changing by 7 or 8 kilometers per second. And so one of the things that I think makes it so captive is that you see the true unity that we as a species, we as a planet are called to. You see the true interconnected, interdependent, beautiful fabric of life that is our biosphere known as Earth. And you can clearly see the human effects on our biosphere, on our planet. You can see, smoke from crop fires rising to the limits of the atmosphere that encompass whole continents and blow out over the ocean. You could see the pollution. You could see all that. So it fills you with a sadness, a sobering contradiction between the beauty of our on the one hand and what we're doing to the beauty on the other hand. A contradiction between the beauty of our planet on one hand and the unfortunate realities of life on our planet on the other hand. A significant number of its inhabitants are not, their lives are not as beautiful as the planet looks from space. And it fills you with a sense of injustice, that it doesn't have to be that way. If we could just learn how to work together, we can easily solve all the problems facing us. But we have to be able to set aside our differences, set aside fear, embrace awe and wonder, and work together.
What is the biggest difference between Russians and Americans?
Nothing. There is no, when you boil it down, there is no difference. People are people, humans are humans. Obviously we have a different history. We have a history that is entwined between the two. And I think that there's so much more in common than we have. That's a difference that it's amazing. Particularly the love of space exploration. That's what brought us together. And I think what the space station program has proven, that a really powerful way to solve our problems, to overcome our differences, is to find the low-hanging fruit, find the things that we agree upon, like space exploration, set aside fear, embrace that thing together. And when we did that in the space station program, personal relationships developed, a certain level of trust developed between the various partners of the International Space Station Partnership. And from there, now we have a platform that we could jump off from, and if we so choose, start to address the things that we don't agree on. But we tend to do the exact opposite. We tend to take the things that we agree upon and use them as a stick to force the things that we disagree on. And that just never works. And so, you know, there's primarily two powerful drivers of motivation and action: fear on one hand and awe and wonder on the other hand. But only awe and wonder leads to long-term action. Only awe and wonder leads to the ability and the willingness to self-sacrifice for a higher cause. Only awe and wonder leads to creative partnerships, innovative partnerships, and agreeing to work together. And I think the problems that are facing us as a species, as a planet, are so big that we're going to have to come together and cooperate to solve those problems. If we have little innovation pockets here and there that are not talking to each other, the solutions will not be as good as they would be if those same innovation pockets are interacting and feeding off each other, and we're sharing our creativity together.
Ron, you speak like a very peaceful politician. I never met somebody, an astronaut, who can speak that well. Your preparation, your language, your speech is very intellectual. How it's managed to be so? You think that your space traveling are finished, and now you are planning to be politician, or what is your aim for now? What is your biggest dream? What you want to do?
So I left space with a call to action. I left space with a call to share the perspective of our planet from space with as many people as I can through as many channels as I can. I've written 3 books. I make documentaries.
Yes, you wrote a book, The Orbital Perspective, where you talk about your traveling, and that if we can make out of spaceship something going out into the space, and we can work together, Russians and Americans and Japanese, and we can do it out of space, how we cannot do it on Earth, which is quite a powerful declaration.
Right. The Orbital Perspective was my first book, but this book, The Floating in Darkness, is my new book. And I'll just tell you how it opens, because it's a very, very powerful book. And it opens with the day I was born. The Soviet Union exploded the Tsar Bomba, the largest man-made explosion in history to this day. It was a record. It was a 50 megaton nuclear blast. And that serves as a juxtaposition for the opening of the first chapter, which has me reporting to nuclear alert in West Germany. And so the first chapter is titled Mutually Assured Destruction. And so through my own life, through things that happened in my own life, I try and illustrate the insanity of what we have brought ourselves to, which was the brink of destruction. And we're still on the brink of destruction, but I think from different causes, probably more environmental causes. And so, like I said, everything I've done since leaving NASA has been done to figuratively or literally, in some cases, transport people to a higher vantage point, because I think that perspective has incredible power and incredible strength to help us solve the problems, to bring us together, to unify us as a species, and to get away from this hyper-nationalism that we're seeing, this polarization, this divisiveness that we're seeing all around the world. That's not our true calling. Our true calling was when I looked up at the rocket and saw the American flag and the Russian flag side by side as we're about to launch to space. That's our true calling. Our true calling is unity as a species.
Ron, tell me, please, you also spent many days, 18 days. I don't know any other speaker I ever met who spent 4 space, walks, who did 18 days at the bottom of the ocean. Is it a joke? Is it possible to spend 18 days at the bottom of the ocean? It's exaggeration. For me, my main job, I'm director and producer of the movies, documentaries. Mm-hmm. So for me, it sounds like somebody is creating a scenario. What did you do in the ocean? Can you explain, please?
Sure. This was in 2006. And we spent 18 days living and working on the bottom of the ocean in Aquarius, the world's only undersea laboratory. And it's not a submarine. It's a habitat on the bottom of the ocean that's open to the ocean. So on one end of the habitat is a pool that if we walk down into the pool, we're walking down onto the bottom of the ocean. And so just like when you take a glass and you put it upside down in the water, the air pressure inside the glass keeps the water from coming up. It's the same thing in the habitat. And so we were there in this ocean floor base simulating a lunar base. We were simulating that we had landed on the moon and we were spending an 18-day mission on the moon. And so we would put our helmets on and go out onto the bottom of the ocean on our sea walks that were simulating lunar
Where
walks.
did you
Moon
like
walks.
better, on in the ocean or in the space? Where it's more pleasant to be?
So the view is better in space. The view of the planet is better. But in space, I didn't get to meet my neighbors. I don't know if we had any neighbors. If we did, I didn't get to meet them. But we definitely got to meet our neighbors living on the bottom of the ocean. It was in a beautiful coral reef off the coast of Key Largo, Florida. And we were not visitors. Like if you go scuba diving, you're visitors to a coral reef. We were residents of the coral reef, and we got to know the neighbors, and they got to know us. We knew where everybody lived, and it was just teeming with marine life of all sorts, and that was amazing. So both of those experiences were spectacular.
Don't you feel bored at the planet now because you were up in the skies, you were down in the ocean? Don't you feel it's very boring for you to be on planet Earth?
Not at all. Not at all. One of the things I learned in space is that all of us, every day, every single person on the earth is surrounded every moment of every day constantly by miracles. The beauty of a flower, the beauty of a sunset, the seeing the birds on the lake with the mist in the morning, all of that is a miracle. And every person, you and every single person you meet is a perfect miracle as well. And so we have learned to unlearn that fact, that basic fact. We realize that when we're children. We realize how miraculous the world is as children, and somehow to function in society, we have to unlearn that, and we have to put ourselves in a small subset of reality and forget the miraculous nature of everything that's around us. And so one of the gifts that I think I was given from being in space is an appreciation for the vast miracles that surround us constantly.
What about, Ron, you managed to collect a lot of money for charity, and also you did some crowdfunding to send more people to space. And maybe you heard that recently Russian crew, shooting crew from the channel #1, they went to space to shoot a movie. And that was the first time in the history when actors went to space, before only cosmonauts. Astronauts. And some people, they feel, oh, we don't like that because, you know, astronauts are kind of, for us, they're heroes, and it's like very elite thing. And if they found out that any actor can go to space, it's not elite anymore. So what do you think about space travels and space walks? Because I know that you want to encourage more and more people to go to space.
Well, first off, I think the more people that go to space and see the planet from that perspective, the better off we're all going to be here on the surface of the earth, because it can be a transformative experience. And all those things we fight about, all those things we quarrel over, all those things that seem so important kind of blur into insignificance when you see the planet from that perspective. And what remains is the unity and the interconnectedness and the interdependencies that exist on our planet. You see the true nature of the world, not the artificial society that we've created. So that's the first thing. The other part of that is, I think there's a difference between people who go to space and people whose profession is to be an astronaut or a cosmonaut, that train for years and years to do that as a profession, as a career. And so I don't know what you call people that fly to space that are not career astronauts or cosmonauts, but I think we need to come up with a name, because I think that's
Space tourists.
I don't know if I like that. I don't like that word because I think it's more than a tour. It's more than a tourist. It's somewhere between being a professional astronaut or cosmonaut and a space tourist. Somewhere in between. I don't know what the right name is, though.
Ron, for you, what you consider your biggest achievement?
Raising the family, having my part in raising the family that we've raised. I have 3 wonderful sons that I'm very proud of, and so I think that's what I'm most proud of. And you know, also the communication that I've done since leaving NASA, since my space flights. You know, writing the books, making the documentary films. I do artwork. I do public speaking all around the world. All with the goal of sharing this perspective and sharing the positive aspects of that perspective of our planet.
Our platform is called Hidden Hero. It's people who are heroes, but they have some obstacles to go out. Maybe they're a little bit afraid, or they're shy, or they have some fears. What you will recommend these hidden heroes?
Well, I would recommend to everybody that they realize that they are incredibly more powerful than they could ever imagine. And I think the vast majority of the people in the world want to leave this place better than they found it. They want to make a positive impact on the world. They want to make the world better. But I think a lot of people hesitate to do that because they don't think that they can be successful. They think the problems of the world are so huge. Even the problems of our own communities are so huge, and I'm just one person. What could I possibly do? But we're taught that we need to leave a legacy, right? That we need to leave a mark on the world to let everybody know that we were here in the future, right? But that's what the world says. But to leave a legacy like that, that won't last. Every famous person, every sports hero, every politician, every statesman, every great scientist, everybody's going to be forgotten eventually. And every great physical thing that we build, every pyramid, every cathedral, eventually will be reduced to dust. So legacy, like the world teaches us we need to leave, is not lasting. But there is a legacy that we can leave that not only will not decay and rust and vanish, but will increase exponentially. And that's in every moment of every day. Everything that you do, every action, every word, every thought ripples out in all directions and takes off exponentially. And a way to illustrate that is, imagine that a giant asteroid was coming towards the Earth, and the asteroid is so big that if it were to hit the Earth, it would wipe out all life on Earth. If we knew about this asteroid soon enough, we wouldn't have to send a spacecraft and blow it to smithereens, which wouldn't work anyway. We could send a very, very small spacecraft, and with the weight equivalent to the force equivalent to the weight of a feather, give that asteroid just a slight nudge. And that slight nudge over the course of its journey to the Earth could result in thousands of miles of mist distance, saving every living thing on the planet. And so where the world will be 100,000 years from now and where it would have been had you not lived are going to be vastly different. And so we are more powerful than we can imagine. And so at the end of the day, when we lay our heads on our pillows, all we need to think about is, did we make more positive nudges today or negative nudges? Because everything that we do affects not only our own life, but it affects the world. And I just want people to realize how powerful they are, and not to think that they can't make a difference, because they're making an amazing difference every day, an incredible difference.
Your sons, my last question to you, final question, 3 sons, are they also want to be astronauts like you?
No. They have chosen they're all grown now, and they have chosen other professions, which I'm happy for, because it's a dangerous business, or it can be.
It's enough of astronauts, yeah? Only Garan, who is almost Gagarin and who landed in Kazakhstan. And in one of your interviews, you said when you landed in Kazakhstan and you came back from the space and you saw a rock and the grass, you think, wow, I'm home. And that was the land of Kazakhstan. So when you're coming to space, you don't separate countries, and that's powerful. There is no big difference between Russians and Americans. And I think we can do much better than our politicians. And instead of creating wars, we can create peace, we can create spaceships, and we can be united. That is the main message of our talk that I got. And stay strong, stay powerful, stay young. That was Garan, almost Gagarin. That was big pleasure.